Every morning, I wake up to an empty car seat and the silence of a house, missing laughter I thought would last forever. I'm just a single dad, struggling to keep my daughter fed, happy, and safe after my wife's sudden death. Bills pile up, nights stretch endlessly, and hope feels like a distant memory, until one hurried ride to the airport changes everything. She was untouchable, a cold, powerful CO, and she left something behind in my car. That small, forgotten item pulls me into her world, revealing vulnerability, trust, and a chance at something I never expected. Can one unexpected encounter truly change the course of your life? If yes, like this video and share your thoughts in the comments. The car felt quieter than usual that morning. Too quiet. My fingers gripped the steering wheel, and I glanced at the empty passenger seat beside me. I'd almost memorized its shape, the little indentation where she used to sit. Sometimes when I drove in the early hours before my daughter woke up, I half expected her to appear beside me, humming softly. But there was only silence. "Daddy," my daughter's small voice cut through the air. "Can we have pancakes today?" I glanced in the rearview mirror and saw her grinning, hair sticking up in every direction. Her excitement was contagious, the kind that made me forget, if only for a moment, the weight pressing on my chest. "Pancakes, huh? You're lucky I'm in a good mood," I said, smiling, though my chest still felt tight. She laughed and bounced in her seat. "Good mood means syrup." I chuckled, shaking my head. "Fine, extra syrup. Don't tell your teacher." Driving through the empty streets, I felt the exhaustion settle in. Shifts at night, bills piling up, trying to stretch every penny. I was drowning, but my daughter was a life raft keeping me afloat. Most nights, I replayed moments of her mother, wondering if I'd done enough, if I'd been strong enough for both of them. The guilt was a quiet companion, always at my shoulder. "Daddy?" she asked suddenly, breaking into my thoughts. Will we ever, have Mommy here again?" The question hit me harder than I expected. I swallowed, gripping the wheel tighter. "No, sweetheart. Mommy can't come back. But I'm here. I'll always be here." Her small hand found mine briefly in the back seat. I wanted to believe that was enough. That night, my phone buzzed with a new ride request. Airport pickup. A VIP. My heart sank slightly. I hated these high-profile rides. Most of the time, I felt invisible to them, just a driver in the background. But I accepted. Needed the money. Always needed the money. I pulled up to the terminal and saw her. Sharp suit, sunglasses, an aura that screamed untouchable. I swallowed hard. "Good evening, ma'am. Ready to go?" She barely glanced at me. "Yes." The fastest route. No stops. "Yes, ma'am," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Her presence was cold, calculating, like she had no time for anything, including me. The drive was silent, save for the low hum of the engine. I stole glances at her now and then, face tense, jaw tight, fingers tapping restlessly on her purse. She looked lonely, but that was none of my business. "Traffic's light tonight," I said, trying to fill the silence. She didn't respond, just stared out the window, lost in something I couldn't touch. When we reached the airport, I pulled to the curb. "Here we are, ma'am." She gathered her things, still avoiding eye contact. "Thanks," she said shortly, slipping from the car before I could say anything more. I exhaled slowly and started to back away, but then my eyes caught it, something on the floor of the passenger side. A small, sealed envelope. Her name was written in neat, cursive handwriting. I froze. Curiosity and fear collided inside me. My first thought, should I pick it up? My second, should I open it? My third, no, I can't. I don't belong in her life. But the thought of leaving it there, it felt wrong, like abandoning a secret she had entrusted to the universe, or to me. I knelt beside the car and carefully grabbed the envelope. My fingers brushed the paper. It was heavier than it looked. "Daddy," my daughter's sleepy voice came from the back seat. "Everything okay?" Yeah, just a little surprised someone left," I said, hiding the envelope behind my leg. I couldn't stop staring at it as I drove home. The letter made no sound, but it spoke volumes. Questions, warnings, maybe even regrets. I felt my pulse quicken. Was this just an accident, or a call for help I didn't fully understand yet? The streets blurred past as my mind raced. Should I open it? Should I return it? Something inside me whispered that this moment would lead to something far bigger than my own struggles. Something I couldn't ignore. A chain reaction had begun, and whether I was ready or not, my quiet, lonely life was about to change. By the time I pulled into our driveway, the envelope still clutched in my hand. I knew one thing. This was no ordinary ride. And the decisions I made next, well, they might just change everything. I stared at the envelope all the way home, my thumb brushing the neat cursive of her name. My daughter chattered in the back seat about school projects and missing homework, but I barely heard her. Everything else faded except the weight of that envelope in my hand. "Daddy, are you listening?" she asked, tilting her head. "I am, Pumpkin," I said, forcing a smile. "Just thinking about something." She frowned but didn't press. Kids have a sense for when adults carry heavy thoughts. They know better than to push. I parked in the driveway and carried the envelope inside, setting it carefully on the kitchen table. My daughter jumped down and tugged at my sleeve. "Can we have pancakes now?" she asked again. Yeah, I muttered. "Go wash your hands first." As she ran to the sink, I picked up the envelope again, turning it over my hands. It looked ordinary, small, paper, easy to overlook, but the presence of it felt monumental. Should I open it? I wanted to know what it held, but my gut told me it wasn't mine to read. I sank into the kitchen chair and exhaled. Memories of my wife hit me like a wave. Every loss carries weight you can't shake, and her absence had left an empty space I tried to fill with routine and survival. I wasn't sure I could handle another person's pain, not tonight, but something about this envelope, something about her, pulled me in. "Daddy?" My daughter's voice cut through my thoughts. "What's that?" I held it out, hesitant. Just something someone left behind. Her eyes widened. "Ooh, can I see?" "No, sweetie, not yet. This is private," I said gently. Her shoulders slumped, but she nodded and returned to her pancakes, leaving me alone with my thoughts. I took a deep breath. I couldn't just leave it in my car. That would feel irresponsible. And yet, taking it felt like stepping into a world I didn't belong in. I replayed her face, so sharp and tense at the airport. She looked untouchable, but maybe that envelope was a crack in her armor. I heard her words in my head, though she hadn't spoken them aloud. I'm trying to reach her before it's too late." A shiver ran down my spine. I knew in some quiet, instinctive way that opening it would change nothing, but returning it could change everything. I made a decision. I'd find a way to give it back. But that meant leaving the safety of my small, predictable life. Meeting her again meant stepping into her world, a world of wealth, control, and danger I barely understood. My stomach knotted at the thought, but I couldn't ignore it. The sound of my daughter laughing broke the tension. She piled syrup onto her pancakes with reckless abandon, and I realized that while I was about to step into someone else's chaos, I had my own anchor right here. I stood and grabbed my jacket. "Hey, Pumpkin, can you finish your pancakes by yourself for a minute? Daddy's going out." "Where are you going?" "Just for a short drive." I said, try not to sound nervous. She didn't push. Kids know when to trust, even when grown-ups are scared. I slipped the envelope into my coat pocket, its edges pressing against my chest like a small heartbeat. My mind raced. How would I find her? Would she even take it back? What if she yelled at me for stepping into her life? And what if she needed me more than I realized? The driveway lights cast long shadows as I started the engine. The car felt different now, charged with anticipation, as if the envelope carried its own life. I swallowed and whispered to myself, just do the right thing. And with that, I pulled into the night, not fully knowing where this ride would end, but certain it would change everything. I couldn't stop thinking about her as I drove through the city streets. The envelope sat on the passenger seat, heavy in my coat pocket. Every red light made my mind race. How would I find her? What would I even say? When I finally reached her office tower, I parked a few blocks away and stared at the glass doors. The reflection of my tired face looked smaller than I felt. I took a deep breath and reminded myself, just return the envelope and leave. Nothing more. I walked in, trying to appear confident. The security guard barely looked at me. Name, he barked. I'm here to deliver something to Miss Carter, I said. My voice sounded small, almost timid. ID. I fumbled in my pockets, feeling every eye on me. People moved quickly around me, briefcases clutched like shields. Finally, the guard waved me through with a skeptical glance. I stepped into the lobby, heart hammering, and there she was, Ms. Carter, CO, untouchable, sharp suit, sharper eyes, standing by the elevators. She didn't smile. She didn't even blink at me. Ms. Carter, I said, my voice cracking slightly. She turned her head, just enough to glance at me. Yes. I think you left something in my car. At the airport. Her eyes flickered briefly toward the envelope in my hand. For a second, I thought she might dismiss me, but instead, she froze. The tension in her shoulders softened, just a little. I see, she said, her voice careful, clipped. Give it here. I held it out. She took it quickly, almost mechanically. My fingers brushed hers. Her hand was cold. I pulled back, suddenly aware how small I felt in her presence. Thank you, she said, almost too fast. I appreciate it. You're welcome, I said. My throat felt tight. I wanted to say more, something human, something real, but the words wouldn't come. She nodded and started walking toward the elevators. I hesitated. Something in the way she moved, the faint slump of her shoulders, made me pause. She looked tired, not just from work. Tired in a way I understood. Wait, I said, almost before I realized it. She stopped, eyes narrowing slightly. Yes. I just wanted to make sure it got back to you safely, I said, fumbling with my words. She studied me for a moment. Then her lips curved, not quite a smile, but closer than anything I'd seen before. It did. Thank you. Silence stretched between us. My stomach knotted. I wanted to say, you don't have to do this alone. But I didn't. Instead, I watched as she stepped onto the elevator and the doors closed. I felt a strange mix of relief and disappointment. I had delivered the envelope, done my job, but I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. I walked back to my car, pockets empty, mind full. The city seemed louder now, cars honking, people rushing past. But inside me, something had shifted. That small interaction, just a glance, a brief moment, had broken through a wall I didn't even know existed. I started the engine, and the streets blurred past again. Thoughts swirled. Would she call me? Would I ever see her again? She had a life I could barely touch. Yet I couldn't ignore the pull she seemed to exert on me. The envelope had returned to her hands. But in a way, it had left something behind with me. Curiosity, a sense of purpose, and an unexpected connection. Something told me this wasn't the last time our paths would cross. As I drove home, my daughter's face came to mind. She would have loved to meet her, even if just for a moment. And maybe, just maybe, she would. I tightened my grip on the wheel and whispered to myself, whatever happens next, I'll do my best. A few days later, my phone buzzed while I was helping my daughter with her homework. I glanced at it and froze. Her name flashed on the screen, Ms. Carter. Daddy? My daughter asked, looking up from her coloring. Who is it? Someone from work. I said, heart racing. I pressed the answer button. Hello, mister? Her voice was low, careful. Not cold, but hesitant. I need a ride. I blinked. Of course. When? Now. And it's important. No stops. Please. My stomach tightened. Something about her tone, serious, almost fragile, made me forget about anything else. I glanced at my daughter. Can you finish up here for a bit? She nodded, sensing I had no choice but to go. The streets were quiet, wet from a late drizzle. I kept stealing glances at the rearview mirror, imagining what kind of situation would require her to call me personally. My thoughts ran wild. Was she in trouble? Hurt? Or was it just her? Something told me it wasn't just an ordinary ride. When I pulled up the hospital entrance, she was already waiting, umbrella in hand, looking smaller and more human than I'd ever seen her. "Thank you for coming," she said, voice barely above a whisper. I didn't want anyone else." I nodded. "No problem. Where to?" "Inside. My father, he's not doing well. I need to see him. Alone. But I can't go by myself." Her words hit me in a strange way. I couldn't explain why, but I understood fear. Loss. The helpless feeling of standing on the edge of something you can't fix. I can sit with you," I said cautiously. "If you want." She looked at me for a long moment. Finally, she nodded and stepped into the car. The ride was silent, except for the hum of the engine. I glanced at her occasionally. Her face was tense, lips pressed together, hands clenched on her purse. She stared out the window, but her eyes were distant, somewhere far away. "You look tired," I said softly. "I am," she admitted, barely moving her gaze. "But it's more than that. I haven't spoken to him in years. And now," her voice faltered. I swallowed. "I understand. I lost someone too. My wife." She glanced at me then, eyes sharp and searching. "I'm sorry. That must be hard." "It is," I admitted. "Some days. It feels like I'm failing my daughter every single moment. But I keep going. For her." She nodded slowly, as if she recognized something familiar in my words. Something human. Something real. We arrived at the hospital entrance. She hesitated before stepping out. "Would you sit with me? Just for a moment? I don't want to be alone." I nodded. "Of course." Inside, the sterile smell of antiseptic hit me. Her steps were quiet, but heavy with emotion. She led me to a room where a man lay, frail and pale, connected to machines. She held the envelope from the airport in her hands, crumpling it slightly as she stared at him. I wanted to say something before. Her voice cracked. I tried. I really tried. I stayed silent. My daughter's laughter came to mind, pure, unguarded. I reached out, lightly resting a hand on her shoulder. "Sometimes you can't fix everything, but being here, it matters. That counts for something." She blinked at me, lips trembling. For the first time, I saw her not as a CEO, but as someone fragile, scared, and human. We sat there together in silence, the beeping machines and soft hospital sounds filling the space. I didn't know if my words helped, but I hoped. And in that quiet, something shifted, a trust forming in tiny increments, fragile yet undeniable. As we left the hospital later, she didn't speak much, but the small nod she gave me when I opened the car door said more than words ever could. The ride back was quiet, but lighter somehow. I knew one thing. Something had changed between us. The envelope, the hospital, the words unsaid. They were threads weaving our lives together. And soon, my daughter would be part of that thread, pulling all of us closer than I'd imagined. The next morning, my daughter bounded into the living room, still half in pajamas, clutching her favorite stuffed bear. "Daddy, can I draw pictures for our new friend?" I froze, realizing she'd remembered Miss Carter. "Our new friend?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "Yes. You said she's coming over later," she said, eyes shining. "Can she meet me?" I hesitated. Part of me wanted to protect her from someone so complicated. The CEO world she moved in felt dangerous, distant. But my daughter's excitement was contagious. "All right, but just for a little while, okay?" She clapped her hands and ran to fetch her crayons. A few hours later, the doorbell rang. My daughter jumped up, tugging my sleeve. It's her. I took a deep breath and opened the door. There she stood, Miss Carter, looking smaller somehow. Her expression softened when she saw my daughter. "Hi," my daughter said shyly, holding out a drawing. She blinked. "Hi, that's lovely," she said, her voice warmer than usual. My daughter beamed. "I made it for you. See? That's you and me and Daddy." I watched her reach for the drawing. Something in her body language shifted. Tense shoulders relaxed, jaw unclenched slightly. She crouched to my daughter's height. "Thank you. I really like it," she whispered. I couldn't help but notice the change. That envelope, the hospital ride, even our awkward airport interaction, all of it had led to this small, human moment. "Do you like coloring?" my daughter asked. "I haven't done it in a long time," she admitted. "Do you want to?" I asked gently. A faint smile curved her lips. Yes, I think I do." We spent the next hour at the table. Crayons scattered across the surface. My daughter laughed as she gave Miss Carter pointers, explaining every color choice. For once, the walls between us, between me and her, between her world and ours, felt a little thinner. Watching them together, I realized how much innocence and simplicity could heal. My daughter didn't see wealth or power. She didn't see coldness or fear. She saw a human being, and slowly, so did I. At one point, Miss Carter looked at me quietly. "You have a lovely daughter," she said. "Yeah," I said, swallowing. "She's the reason I keep going every day." She nodded, almost solemnly, and for a brief moment, I saw a trace of the woman behind the CO mask, the one who had loved, who had lost, who had needed someone too. The afternoon passed with more laughter, more small conversations, more shared glances. I kept thinking, if a child can teach an adult about trust and warmth in an hour, imagine what days could do. Finally, she stood. "I should go. But thank you," she said. "For what?" I asked. "For letting me be human for a little while," she admitted. My daughter tugged at my sleeve. "Will she come back?" I think so," I said softly, though my heart felt heavier than I expected. Something about today had changed the dynamic forever. As the door closed behind her, I sat on the couch with my daughter. "You know," I said, brushing her hair from her eyes, "sometimes people need a little help to remember how to be kind, how to trust. And sometimes we get to help them." She smiled, leaning against me. "I think I helped her, Daddy." "You did?" I whispered, hugging her tightly. "And maybe she helped us too." Later, when I looked around the living room, the crayons scattered, the small drawings everywhere, I realized how much my daughter's innocence had bridged a gap I couldn't have crossed alone. That small act, a hand reaching out, a smile shared, had changed everything. And deep down, I knew the next time we saw her, the connection would only grow stronger. I gripped the steering wheel tighter than usual as we drove up the long, winding driveway. My daughter sat in the back seat, chattering about her favorite cartoons, oblivious of the tension building around us. I glanced at Miss Carter in the passenger seat. Her posture was rigid, hands folded neatly in her lap, eyes fixed on the landscape outside. "This place, it's huge," my daughter said, staring out the window. "Yeah," I muttered, trying to hide my own unease. I've been inside mansions before, but never one that carried the weight this place seemed to hold. She didn't respond. I noticed the tight line of her jaw, the flicker of something in her eyes I couldn't name. When we stepped inside, the silence of the mansion hit me like a wall. Marble floors, polished surfaces, echoing hallways. My daughter's small footsteps sounded fragile against the grandeur. I wanted to shield her from it, but it was impossible. The place was magnificent and lonely. "I'll just show you to the living area," she said, gesturing with a faint smile. I nodded. "Thanks. You don't have to do this, you know." She shrugged, but there was a heaviness in her shoulders. "It's my choice, but I think you should see this." I followed her through vast hallways, my daughter trailing behind, eyes wide. Pictures lined the walls. Family portraits, vacations, celebrations. But there was a strange emptiness to them. People in the photos smiled, but their eyes didn't match. The house felt like it was holding on to memories too big to fit in the present. We stopped in front of a grand living room. She sat down on a velvet couch. my daughter climbing onto the rug in front of her. I hesitated at the doorway, noticing an envelope on the coffee table, older, yellowed slightly, like it had been waiting. "That's from my father," she said quietly, almost to herself. I swallowed. "I'm sorry. I didn't know." She waved it off. "It's not your fault. He's complicated." Her eyes met mine. "And I guess I am too." I nodded, feeling the weight of the room pressing in. Despite the luxury, I understood her loneliness. Loss and responsibility don't discriminate between mansions and apartments. "Can I ask you something?" she said suddenly, her voice fragile. "Of course," I said. "Why do you keep going? Even when it's hard, even when you're alone." I glanced at my daughter, busy with crayons from her backpack. "Because I have someone who needs me. My daughter, she's my reason." Her expression softened. I've tried to reach my father. I left letters, calls, nothing. And now, her voice faltered, and I could see the pain she carried. "I get that," I said quietly. "I lost my wife. Some days, it feels like I can't breathe. But for her, I keep going. That's all that matters." We sat in silence, letting the words sink in. My daughter tugged at my sleeve. "Daddy, she's crying." "She's not alone," I whispered. "She just needs someone to sit with her." I scooted closer, resting a hand lightly on her arm. She leaned against me briefly, taking a shaky breath. For the first time, I felt her guard drop just a little, revealing the person behind the CEO mask. The daughter, the woman who had been trying to connect, failing and still trying. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" I asked. "For letting me feel human here, even for a little while." I nodded. "Sometimes we need to let someone in, even if it's scary." We stayed there for a while longer. My daughter played quietly on the rug, oblivious to the emotional weight in the room. I watched Ms. Carter, noticing the way she softened as her shoulders relaxed. This wasn't about money or power. It was about connection, trust, and the courage to be vulnerable. Before leaving, she handed me the envelope from the table. I think it's time someone else sees this," she said softly. I nodded, slipping it into my coat pocket. My daughter peeked up at me. "Can we read it?" "Not yet," I said gently. "It's important, but we'll take it slowly." Driving away, I couldn't shake the feeling that this day had changed something fundamental. The mansion had shown me the cost of isolation, the weight of expectation, and the quiet desperation behind polished surfaces. And in that space, a bond had begun to form, one that would pull us all closer, bridging worlds I had never imagined stepping into. Deep down, I knew the next chapter would challenge us further, but it would also teach us about family, trust, and the power of being seen. The cemetery was quiet, except for the occasional rustle of leaves and distant crows. My daughter held my hand tightly, sensing the tension in the air. I could feel her small fingers trembling against mine. I don't know if I can do this, Daddy," she whispered. "You can," I said softly, squeezing her hand. "We'll do it together." Ms. Carter stood a few feet away, looking at the grave with her usual composed posture. But I could see it in her eyes, the cracks, the grief she tried so hard to hide. Her father's name etched in stone stared back at us like a reminder of everything unfinished. I haven't spoken to him in years," she murmured. "I left letters. Tried calls. Nothing worked. And now he's gone." I swallowed, feeling the lump in my throat. I knew that feeling too well. The helplessness, the regret. My wife was gone, and every day since had been a struggle to fill the space she left behind. "I'm sorry," I said quietly. I know how that feels. Sometimes it feels like the world doesn't wait for us to be ready." She glanced at me, and for a moment, she looked human. Not the untouchable CO, but a woman carrying the weight of loss and fear. You understand?" "I do," I said. "I lost someone too. And some days it feels like I'm failing my daughter, but I keep going. That's what matters." She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. I stepped closer, letting her lean against me if she needed. My daughter tugged at my sleeve, watching silently. "Your daughter," Ms. Carter said softly. "She's amazing." "How do you do it?" I glanced down at my little girl, who was holding a small flower she had picked from the grass. You do it because you have to. You love them more than anything. That love, it keeps you moving, even when you don't want to. She wiped her tears and took a shaky breath. I never knew it could feel like this. The loss, the guilt, the regret. You're human, I said gently. We all feel it. The important thing is to let someone in when it hurts. Otherwise, it eats you up. She nodded, staring at the grave. I didn't want anyone to see me like this. You don't have to hide anymore, I said. Not here. Not now. We stood in silence for a while, the weight of our words mingling with the quiet cemetery air. My daughter placed her small flower on the grave, looking at Miss Carter for reassurance. I saw a shift, the first real crack in her armor. She reached down and gently patted my daughter's hand. Thank you, she whispered, for letting me be here, for not judging. You don't need to thank me, I said. Just take it one step at a time. That's all any of us can do. Her shoulders relaxed slightly, and she let out a shaky laugh. One step at a time. Yeah, I think I can try that. As we started walking back to the car, I realized something. The envelope she had left in my car months ago. It wasn't just a piece of paper. It was a bridge, a first thread connecting our lives. And now, standing here with her in her most vulnerable state, I understood that trust and care could exist even between two worlds that seemed completely different. Daddy, my daughter asked softly, will she stay friends with us? I glanced at Miss Carter, who was now looking at us with something close to warmth in her eyes. I think she will, I said, feeling a quiet certainty in my chest. We drove home in silence, each of us lost in thought. But the quiet was different, lighter. There was hope now, a fragile trust forming that could grow into something more, something real. Later, as I tucked my daughter into bed, I thought about Miss Carter and her father, about the envelope, the mansion, and the laughter we had shared. Sometimes life throws you into people's worlds when you least expect it. And sometimes those people can change everything. I whispered a promise to myself. No matter what happens next, I'll be ready. Ready to help, to listen, and hold on to the family I have, even if it grows in ways I never imagined. A few days after the cemetery visit, my phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. I hesitated before answering, then recognized the voice immediately. Mr. Ahmed? It's Ms. Carter, she said, calm but with an edge of urgency. Hi, I said, heart pounding. Is everything okay? Yes, she said quickly, mostly. Listen, I want to talk to you. About, well, everything. Can you come to my office? I glanced at my daughter, who was coloring at the table. Sure. I can come now, I said. She didn't explain further, but I felt it in her tone. Something big was coming. Driving there, my mind raced. What could she want? Money? A favor? Or something more personal? I swallowed the knot in my throat. Whatever it was, I knew it would change the trajectory of our lives. When I arrived, she led me into her office. Expensive, pristine, intimidating, but I noticed a small vase of flowers on the desk. My daughter's drawings had probably inspired her. Please sit, she said, gesturing toward a chair. I sat, feeling oddly small in the vast space. I've been thinking, she began, voice softer than usual, about you, your daughter, and the way you handled everything. How you've managed to keep going despite everything. I shifted uncomfortably. I do what I can. That's all. No, she said firmly. It's more than that. You've shown strength, care, patience. And I want to offer you something. My stomach tightened. Offer me what? She paused, searching my face for a reaction. I want to help you. Financially, I mean. I know you struggle. And I don't want this to be charity. I want to be a chance. A way to give your daughter a better life. I felt my throat tighten. I don't know what to say. I can't accept something like that. I know, she said softly. It's not easy. I struggled too, growing up, losing my father, not having support. And now, I can do something for someone who deserves it. I shook my head, overwhelmed. I just want to give my daughter a good life. But I don't know. You've already given her something priceless, she said, eyes locking with mine. Love, strength, a home filled with hope. But this can help you keep going. Keep thriving. Keep building memories. I swallowed hard, thinking about my daughter, her laughter, her little hands holding mine, her innocence and trust. And then I thought about Miss Carter, about her vulnerability at the cemetery, about the subtle changes I had seen in her over the past weeks. I need some time, I said finally, to think, to understand what this really means. Of course, she said, nodding. Take your time. But I hope you'll consider it. Not just for you, but for her, and for the chance to build something better than what we had. I left her office with a mixture of awe and fear. My mind replayed her words over and over. Could I accept help? Would it change who we were, or simply give us a chance to thrive? Driving home, I watched my daughter through the rear-view mirror. She was laughing at a silly cartoon, completely unaware of the decisions unfolding in my life. My heart swelled. Whatever choice I made, it had to honor her future, her happiness. By the time I pulled into the driveway, I had made a silent promise to myself. I would not let fear or pride stop me from doing what was best for her. And maybe, just maybe, this offer was the start of something that could change everything. I tucked my daughter into bed that night, holding her close. We might have a new adventure coming, Pumpkin, I whispered. Something big. But whatever happens, I promise, I'll always protect you. Always. Her sleepy smile was all the answer I needed. The envelope sat on my kitchen table again. My daughter was playing nearby, her laughter echoing softly against the walls. I stared at the neat cursive of Miss Carter's handwriting and the memory of her words at the office. This can help you keep building memories. I swallowed hard, knowing this decision wasn't just about money. It was about trust, pride, and opening a door I'd been afraid to touch. My daughter tugged at my sleeve. Daddy, can we play puzzles? Sure, Pumpkin, I said, forcing a smile. Inside, I felt a storm. Could I accept help from her? Was it charity, or was it something more, a bridge between our worlds? I picked up the envelope, feeling its weight. For weeks, it had been more than paper. It had been hope, fear, and possibility all rolled into one. The doorbell rang, and my heart jumped. It was her, Ms. Carter. I hope I'm not intruding, she said, stepping inside. I just wanted to check in. You're not, I said, stepping aside. My daughter ran to her with open arms. Hi, my daughter exclaimed. Do you want to see my puzzles? She crouched down, smiling softly. I'd love to. I watched them interact, noticing the subtle change in her. Gone was the untouchable CEO posture. Here was someone human, someone learning to trust. After a while, she looked at me seriously. Have you thought about my offer? I nodded slowly. I have, and I don't know how to say this without sounding strange, but I think we could use the help, not because we're weak, but because it allows us to keep moving forward. Her eyes softened, almost smiling. I didn't want you to feel forced. I wanted it to be your choice. But I hoped you'd see it the same way. I do, I admitted. I do see it that way. She took a deep breath. Good, because I'd like us to be part of each other's lives. Not just transactions or favors. Real connection, if you're willing. I glanced at my daughter, who was now focused on placing the last puzzle piece. Her innocent trust reminded me that some of life's biggest lessons come from the smallest hearts. I'm willing, I said quietly. For the first time in weeks, she relaxed, letting a true smile appear. Thank you, she whispered. We spent the afternoon talking, planning small projects, and dreaming aloud. My daughter jumped in with ideas, too, her imagination filling the room with light and laughter. I realized that what we were creating together wasn't just financial security. It was trust, friendship, and perhaps even the beginning of a family of sorts. Later, as the sun began to set, I reflected on how far we'd come. from a forgotten envelope in my car, to hospital rides, to laughter around a kitchen table. Every choice had led us here. And now, I had the power to decide the next chapter, not just for me, but for my daughter and for her too. Ms. Carter stood near the doorway, looking at us. "You know," she said softly, "I've learned more from your daughter than I expected. About hope, about life." "She's something special," I said, watching my little girl unhappily as she finished her puzzle. "She is," Miss Carter agreed. "And so are you. You keep going, even when it's hard. You remind me that people can be good, even in complicated worlds." I swallowed. Sometimes it just takes someone else believing in you to keep going. She nodded. "Exactly." I looked at her, my chest tightening with something I hadn't felt in a long time. Possibility. Not just survival, not just getting by, but the chance to build something bigger, to heal, to connect, to love. "Daddy," my daughter asked suddenly, tugging my sleeve, "can we make more puzzles tomorrow?" I smiled, hugging her close. "Yes, Pumpkin. Tomorrow we'll make as many as you want." Miss Carter watched quietly, then turned to me. "Tomorrow and the next day and the next, we can make a lot of puzzles together." I nodded, feeling a weight lift from my chest. Choices had been made. Chances had been taken. And somehow, in the midst of grief, fear, and struggle, hope had returned. The envelope remained on the table, a symbol of what brought us together. But now, it wasn't about obligation or debt. It was about life, connection, and the unexpected ways people can change each other. As I tucked my daughter into bed that night, I whispered a promise. No matter what happens next, we'll face it together. With courage, with love, with hope. And in the quiet, I felt it. The first true sense that our small, struggling family and the unexpected ally we had found could finally start to heal. The morning sunlight poured through the kitchen window, casting warm streaks across the table. My daughter sat on the counter, legs swinging, humming happily. I watched her, heart full, thinking about how far we'd come. From empty mornings after my wife's death to laughter and hope filling our home, everything felt new. "Daddy," she said suddenly, turning to me, "can we make pancakes and puzzles today?" I laughed softly. "Of course, Pumpkin. Pancakes first, then puzzles." The doorbell rang and my stomach tightened, not with fear this time, but anticipation. Miss Carter stood there, holding a small bouquet of wildflowers. She smiled, and for the first time, it felt genuine, easy, human. "Good morning," she said softly. "I thought I'd bring these for her." My daughter jumped from the counter. "For me?" she squealed, running to hug her. "Yes," Miss Carter said, laughing lightly. "And maybe for you too," she added, glancing at me. I felt warmth spread through me. This wasn't about business, envelopes, or offers anymore. It was about connection, about people showing up for each other in ways that mattered. We spent the morning together, cooking pancakes, spilling syrup, and laughing at our mistakes. My daughter insisted Miss Carter try her special pancake art, and for the first time, she didn't protest. She played along, even letting my daughter sprinkle chocolate chips unevenly on the edges. "You're good at this," she said, smiling at my daughter's proud face. "Not as good as you," my daughter replied confidently. I laughed, shaking my head. "You two are trouble together." Later, we sat on the living room floor, building puzzles. Miss Carter and my daughter worked side by side, their heads bent over pieces, laughing quietly at the mismatched colors. I watched them, feeling a peace I hadn't known in years. "Daddy," my daughter whispered, looking up at me, "do you think she'll stay with us?" I nodded. "I think she wants to." She smiled and returned to the puzzle, satisfied with my answer. After a while, Miss Carter looked at me, eyes serious again. "I want to say thank you for letting me in, for trusting me. I didn't know how much I needed this." "You've earned it," I said softly. "We all need someone who believes in us. And you've shown you care." Her lips curved into a small smile. "I think we all needed this. Each of us. You, your daughter, me." I nodded, Thinking about the envelope, the hospital rides, the mansion, and the cemetery. Each step had been messy, painful, and uncertain, but had led us here. Daddy, my daughter asked again, tugging at my sleeve. Can we read the envelope now? I glanced at Miss Carter, who nodded gently. I think it's time, she said softly. We gathered around the table, and I carefully opened it. Inside were old letters, memories, and words left behind by her father. But they weren't just about loss. They were reminders of love, lessons, and important connection. My daughter read a line aloud, then giggled. He liked puzzles too. We all laughed, and for the first time, the weight of the past felt lighter. The envelope, once a symbol of mystery and fear, had become a bridge to understanding, healing, and family. As the day went on, I realized something profound. Life doesn't wait for perfect timing. People enter our lives unexpectedly, bringing change, challenges, and sometimes hope. It's up to us to embrace it, to take chances, and to let love in. I looked at Miss Carter, my daughter, and the small chaos of our kitchen filled with laughter, crumbs, and scattered puzzle pieces. And I knew, in that moment, that this, right here, was our new beginning. No more fear, no more empty seats, no more wondering if we were enough. We were. We always had been. I hugged my daughter tightly. We'll face everything together now, I whispered. She smiled sleepily against me. Together, she echoed. Miss Carter sat beside us, quiet but present, and I realized that sometimes families are built in the most unexpected ways. Through trust, courage, and simple acts of love, we could heal. And somehow, miraculously, we already had. The morning light felt brighter, the world warmer, and for the first time in years, I believed that no matter what came next, we could face it, together.